wonder if the sound on this is working. It looks like it's working. You would tell me if there's feedback.
That sounds like feedback.
Hello? What?
We can hear you, but you can't talk.
I have to talk to you through the phone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Is there feedback?
Okay, there you go.
Is there feedback?
Talk to me.
When you talk, is there feedback?
I can't hear when I talk.
Oh, okay. We'll find out.
Now you can tell.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi.
Okay, I don't hear anything,
Okay.
but I'm only hearing you through my phone.
You don't hear any feedback or you don't hear anything at all?
I hear you on my phone or I couldn't talk to you.
Okay.
Okay, I'm taking you off mic.
Hello. Hi, Cheryl Kashluga.
Hi Cheryl, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I bought a $220 TV so that you could see the presenters.
Right, got it.
With the DJs also. Now I gotta get the tax exempt certificate and mail it in for my 18 bucks back for CBC.
I hope I'll be able to hear the meeting okay.
Can you hear us now?
Yes, this is better.
Liam, has Anna showed up yet?
She joined like left.
Do we know how long the meeting's going to last?
We would hope that the presentation would be about 20 minutes, then questions from the agency, then some determination as to whether the board would like to schedule a public hearing pending availability of legal notice space in the Register Star. I would hope an hour would be more than enough.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
It's really
Only
just a
because
presentation.
I'm on my lunch hour in my other job.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your help. The consultant said that you were very helpful to them in providing the data that was available.
Okay, good.
Did you get the updated one?
Yes.
Damn. They're prepared. Yeah. Yeah. That works with the schedule. It's still with the application. Bert, zoom in, please. Are you having trouble getting in? Sorry. Okay.
Sorry.
Yes, we should be here now. They were still on the camera. So, great. Thanks so much. Bye. Liam Merchant, this is Mayor Johnson. These are Liam is here. This is Richard Wallace, board member. Without him, we wouldn't have been able to put the TV together and find the cord that I need to make it all work.
It's the right profile. You doing well?
Oh,
It shouldn't start recording until 1,
That's
but it
good.
won't start until he's done.
I learned my lesson once about that.
I know, that's why I kind of warned you, but I don't want to forget to turn it on.
It strengthened my relationship with Rebecca because I said that I didn't put myself off. So, fortunately, all I said was, "I didn't believe you and let me answer your questions." And she said, "That's right." Welcome.
Hey, good afternoon.
Kind of sit wherever. This is the board. Yeah, we'll be on the other side. We have some more chairs over here.
Good to see you again. How are you? So nice to see everybody in person. Hey, John. Good to see you. How are you? All right, good. How are you? I've got to tell you this.
Hello, section. Madam Chair.
Yes,
I think you like that.
I was there with my fiance and mother-in-law, and you had a picture of it. I was like, wow.
Help yourself if you want one. Hey, John. Hey, Dan, how are you? Welcome.
Thank you.
Good to
Good to see you. Hey, Rebecca. Hey, Mike.
How are you?
Good. Pleasure to see you again.
I like
person. Don't get nervous, sir.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're quorum 6.
There
But
you go.
we can't count Cheryl as a quorum. She can't.
What do you think?
Good. I got some time away from the office.
I think that-
Yes. You know, it's day and age. Don't stop. Work 3 or 4 hours a day anyway. Come back out.
Hey, I retired 18 years ago. I'm still doing this kind of stuff.
Especially at the age.
Well, you know, one thing. I don't have to send you, we started to build up that steam on the school life media thing. Yeah. We'll have to send you some information on that.
How are you?
I am living the dream. How are you?
If everyone else is, I better get on board. But yeah, it's been a good summer except for the rain. I'm old enough to know that song. We'll have fun if it stops. They told us at Camp Granada that we'd have fun if it stopped raining. Take me home.
Yeah, but father didn't care.
No. And Nancy Lunch,
Exactly.
I think it was, if you take me home, I'll leave it to let the aunt hug and kiss me or
There you
something. You know?
Should I move the chairs to this side?
Yeah, take those chairs over there. Cheryl is with us.
Hello.
Hello?
Hello, hello. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
I'm sure everyone is.
Eric? Anyone checked in? Okay.
Yes.
One for each project. Yeah.
It is now 1:01 p.m. We are going to, you hear me? We're going to start the Hudson IDA meeting. I believe we have everyone present. And we begin with our financial analysis. Will be housing budget.
Thank you. We have with us remotely today Anna Marsh and Kay Hayashi with VJH Advisors. They are in Brooklyn and New York City. Kay had been the executive director or president of the New York City IDA before her entering into consulting work. And we also have with us from Camoin, who had done the original study, Rachel Selsky, and also joining us is our assessor, and I'm not sure who's there with us. Lauren Lopez.
Yeah. Yeah, we're from Baxter.
Okay, great. Okay, so Baxter is the contractor for the developer. Rachel represents Camoin, which was the consulting firm that the developer hired to do their economic impact analysis. And we have our two representatives from BJH. Everyone else is watching on our live stream, but for the interactive presentation, this group is on Zoom. We hope that when the presentation is made, that our live stream technician will be able to broadcast the Zoom presentation through the live stream. If not, you will be able to hear it, presumably through the microphone from the live stream, but we will also have separate links for recordings for anyone that is unable to hear the presentation. Kay and Anna, I'll turn the presentation over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just wanted to say a few words. Thank you very much for inviting us. Thank you, Mike, for having us, giving us this opportunity to do the review. I think that Anna's going to do most of the presentation as to our analysis and recommendations. And if you have questions, if you wouldn't mind holding them to the end so that we can answer them more comprehensively. The presentation's only about 15 minutes. Thank you. Anna?
Thank you. Thank you, Kay and Mike, and thank you to everyone for joining. So I'll just begin by introducing that the developer, as you all probably know, has applied for IDA benefits for the Depot District project, which includes 75 North 7th Street, a regulated affordable housing development with LIHTC equity, and 708 State Street, a mixed income housing development with private equity. BJH advisors evaluated the project pro forma structure and income and expense assumptions to assess whether all of the requested benefits are needed to financially sustain both developments. In this presentation, I will describe our findings regarding the pro forma structure, the income assumptions, which are based on rent, and the project cost and operating expense assumptions, including construction, replacement reserves, and property taxes. Then in this presentation, we'll take a look at both projects' debt service coverage ratio or cash on cash returns as a way to understand whether all of the requested benefits are needed to financially sustain the projects. So one thing that I also just want to try out now is to see if I can share my screen. Mike, it's saying that the host disabled screen sharing. Is there any way to enable that, as I'll want to pull up some appendices during the presentation? Well, I'll.
I believe you should be able to have share screen. Do you have the green button at the bottom of your?
Yeah, it's just that it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
We're trying to fix that now.
Okay, no problem. I don't need it quite yet, so I'll keep going for now. So BJH first took a look at the pro forma structures and found that the pro forma for North 7th Street was structured as BJH would recommend. However, BJH...
You should have it soon, and because of the technology, if you could speak just a little slower.
Yes. Okay, yes, it's working now. Thank you so much. So here's just sort of the introductory portion of our presentation. So, okay, as I mentioned, BJH first took a look at the pro forma structures and found that the pro forma for North 7th Street, which is the affordable development, was structured as BJH would recommend. BJH, however, recommended that the developer revise the 708 State Street pro forma, which is for the mixed income or market rate project, to remove an oversight double counting of taxes and to include replacement reserves. The developer made these changes, and the updated version was used as the basis for BJH.
And I'm going to have to ask you to go slower.
Okay, got it. Thank you, Mike. So the updated version of the 708 State Street pro forma was used for BJH's review. So BJH then reviewed the income assumptions in both project pro formas, which include residential and commercial rent. The developer based the projected residential rents for both developments on a market study conducted by Novogradac Consulting in 2020, and based the commercial rents for both developments on the Galvin Foundation's existing portfolio of commercial properties. I'll now turn to Appendix A, where you can see that BJH looked at how the pro forma rents compare with CoStar rents. And CoStar is a real estate analytics service, and the data was for the Hudson submarket. So through this comparison, we found that the pro forma rents for the 1-bedroom units and commercial space are slightly higher than CoStar rents, but the pro forma rents for the 2- and 3-bedroom units are slightly lower than CoStar rents, thereby balancing each other out. For this reason, BGH does not recommend changing the market rent assumptions. I'll just move back up here for the next portion. So after reviewing the income assumptions, BGH reviewed project costs and operating expenses, as mentioned previously, including construction costs and replacement reserves. BGH found that construction costs were recorded at about $250,000 per unit for 75 North 7th Street, the affordable development, and at about $205,000 per unit for the 708 State Street development, which is the mixed income or market rate development. BGH found that these construction costs, which were prepared by Baxter, a reputable construction company with multifamily experience in the Mid-Hudson region, to be reasonable. BGH also found that replacement reserves were recorded at $250 per unit for the 75 North 7th Street development and at about $300 per unit for the 708 State Street development, which also both align with industry standards. So BGH does not recommend changes to the project's construction costs or replacement reserves. The next portion of our review was looking at another major operating expense, property taxes. In the pro forma, the full property taxes for the mixed income and affordable developments are based on the City of Hudson's tax rate and the property's estimated assessed value, as calculated through an income-based approach. The requested pilot payments are modeled as a percent of the projected full property taxes. It is therefore important to review the estimated assessed value in order to confirm the full property tax and corresponding pilot payment. BJH confirmed with the developer that the project's estimated assessed value was calculated using an income capitalization method for the first year of net operating income, inclusive of the pilot expense. So looking at operating income after the pilot has been paid. And with a market capitalization rate of 6% and tax rate of 2.6% for an overall cap rate of 8.6%. Using this method, the assessed value is projected to be approximately $85,000 per unit for 75 North 7th Street, the affordable development, and approximately $170,000 per unit for 708 State Street, the mixed income or market rate development. However, BJH recommends calculating the assessed value using the first year of NOI inclusive of the full property tax expense as opposed to the pilot expense. So we'd be looking at operating income after full property tax as opposed to a compromised pilot amount, which lowers the net operating income and results in a lower assessed value of approximately $63,000 per unit for 75 North 7th Street, the affordable development, and approximately $130,000 per unit for 708 State Street. Now I will move to Appendix B, where you can see that BJH looked at the developer's projected assessed values relative to comparable projects. We'll note that the Hudson market multifamily comparables are generally older and of a lower construction grade than the Depot District will be. Still, the developer's assessed values are lower than comparables, which range on a per unit basis from the mid 50,000s for affordable units, which are in this middle section, and to the mid $130,000 for unregulated or market rate units, which are in this lower section of the table. So BJH also spoke and communicated with the City of Hudson assessor, who provided feedback on potential assessed values in the Depot District. Thank you, Cheryl, who's on this call, for providing that feedback and guidance. And we welcome additional feedback from the assessor's office. So finally, while BJH's income capitalization method and comparable suggests the project's assessed value could differ from the developer's assumptions, BGH does not recommend evaluating the pro formas and pilot models using a lower assessed value, given the inconclusiveness of conversations with the assessor and unpredictability of Hudson's post-COVID market. Okay, I'll just move back up here as we go to the next section. So having confirmed the project's income and expense assumptions, BGH then reviewed both projects' debt service coverage ratio, or cash-on-cash return, to assess their financial viability and to answer a key question. Does the developer need all of the tax benefits, which are incorporated into the pro forma and reflected in the cash returns, in order to afford the projects? BGH found that the 708 State Street, or market rate project, reaches a cash-on-cash return of 7% by year 10 and has a debt service coverage ratio of 1.25 to 1.45 between years 1 and 10. BGH found that 75 North 7th Street, which is the affordable development, has a debt service coverage ratio of 1.17 to 1.29 between years 1 and 10, which is slightly lower than for 708 State Street. As a regulated affordable development with LIHTC equity, this development's cash-on-cash return is less relevant. It was not considered for this analysis. BGH considers the debt service coverage ratio of 75 North 7th Street, the affordable development, to indicate the project is financially viable, but could not sustain lower benefits. BGH considers 708 State Street's cash-on-cash returns between years 1 and 10 reasonable for attracting private capital. In addition, the project does reach a hurdle cash-on-cash return of 7% by year 10, indicating the developer could pay a higher pilot over a shorter period of time after meeting that cash-on-cash hurdle. So these takeaways bring us to the discussion section, where we look at the developer's proposed pilot schedules, as well as an alternative pilot schedule, and the cash-on-cash returns for both. The alternative pilot schedule is only for 708 State Street, as the project reaches the 7% cash-on-cash return hurdle by year 10, and not for 75 North 7th Street, because the project is regulated affordable, and its 10-year debt service coverage ratio of 1.29 is just above the industry recommendation of 1.25. So if we look at Appendix C, let me zoom out a bit. We have on the left panel the developer's proposed 25-year pilot schedule, and this is all for 708 State Street, and the corresponding cash-on-cash return. On the right side, we have an alternative 20-year pilot schedule, and again, the corresponding cash-on-cash return. As you can see, both schedules are the same for years 1 through 10 when the project reaches a cash-on-cash hurdle of 7.2%. The alternative pilot schedule on the right therefore shows that an accelerated phase out of property taxes in years 11 through 20 would not financially harm the project. So I will conclude this presentation on this note, and Mike, if you would like to add anything before we take questions, that'd be good. Or we can
step out for a second. So before we take questions, I just wanted to be clear that we're taking questions only about this analysis. We're not taking any commentary or comments that will be left for the public hearing. If you have questions pertaining to presentation, that's what we'll take at this time.
I'm sorry, Anna, I had to step out. Did you have a question for me?
Well, we wanted to say anything before we opened it up to board member questions.
I did, sure. Handle that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any questions? Okay.
Maybe just
Please speak.
this might just be a vocabulary question, which is so the 708 State Street proposal you're referring to as market rate, but it does have restrictions on it in terms of what level in terms of affordability and subsidy. So I'm just curious how that works.
Wait, I'm sorry. Who asked that question?
This is Rebecca Wolf on the IDA board.
We actually are, we're calling it market rate because we are not privy to the regulatory agreement. We haven't seen that. So we don't know what regulatory construct governs the affordability. We did see the letter that the developer submitted to the IDA proposing restrictions. But you know, relative to the other project, which is regulated by LIHTC, this one doesn't have that formal framework right now.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public pertaining to this presentation? Doesn't look like we have any questions at this time.
I actually have a question. I'm just looking at,
Introduce yourself.
oh, sorry. Hi, my name's Heather Campbell. I'm also on the Hudson IDA board. I'm just looking at Appendix C, the pilot schedules. And I would have thought that the rate, so the rate doesn't change. I'm just confirming that I'm looking at this correctly. Even though they hit the cash on cash return at the end of year 10, the percentage rate doesn't actually change from the original proposal until year 16. I'm just wondering if you can explain, if they're hitting their cash on cash numbers at year 10, why wouldn't the rate start decreasing in year 11 through year 20?
Yeah, we proposed a gradual phase out that left some of the developers proposed pilot static even after year 10. I mean, 7% is kind of our definition of threshold or hurdle right now, but every investor is different. And we wanted just to also give a cushion. Some investors won't look at anything under 8. So 7% is a reasonable hurdle. However, you know, allowing the pilot schedule to remain the same for a few years does give a little cushion.
Okay, so it takes it from 7 all the way up to 9.4 before it scales out.
Based on these projections, yes.
And
One of the other, oh, go ahead, sorry.
One of the issues that we discussed with Kay and Anna was, you know, all of the expenses that trigger the net bottom line to calculate the rate of return. By year 10, you're estimating, you know, if electric rates go up 5%. I mean, you're averaging the 2 or 3% that they use. So it does get kind of difficult out there to know whether you're at a 7% return or a 14% return.
And the same thing's true with the assessed value.
Yeah. So there's an inherent staticness to this.
Can I ask a question? I'd like to understand whether this primarily speaks to the evaluation of the pilot. This primarily speaks to the evaluation of the pilot. The fiscal analysis that the developer presented also spoke to the valuation of the sales tax and mortgage tax. So by not commenting on that, or did I miss something? Are they agreeing to the evaluation that was provided in the prior report?
It was not the scope of the project to look at that analysis.
They were only looking at the pilot. So are we accepting the Cameron report for purposes of those values?
That's why we included it in the material we sent to you, and that's why Moyna's on the phone this morning or afternoon. I'm correct, Kay, that while you looked at the Camoin report, your focus was on the pilot?
Well, I mean, we did look at the construction budget, which would have included, you know, sales tax and mortgage recording tax items, had those been included in the cost structure. What we found was that even without the sales tax and mortgage recording tax, the per unit costs are they are within the range that we're hearing in the Mid-Hudson region for, unit development for new construction. It's not overly high nor low. And so we accepted the developer's budget without those two components of cost, and therefore are accepting that, and also have analyzed the project without those costs as financially feasible, however, not overly so, meaning there isn't excess right now returns in the pro forma without those costs. So we're accepting that the developer needs the benefit, needs the mortgage recording and sales tax benefits. It's a different kind of analysis from pilot. The other thing is they're at a stage in the development budget where things aren't completely detailed. I mean, there's still contingency, so it's moving around a bit. It's hard to do a very specific line item.
I understand.
Sales tax, yeah.
The reason for the question, as you might understand, is that when we send out a notice to explain the proposed benefits, we obviously need to explain the estimated value of those exemptions. So I just want to make sure that we're, for purposes of the sales and mortgage tax request, we're using the values that were stated in the campaign.
We can evaluate the benefit amounts based on the construction budget, the proposed financing level. Yes, the hard costs, we can do that.
We have to set up another meeting.
Not for Chris.
Just before we can send out the notice.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll need it for the notices, but the agency would consider that at its final review of the project.
It could, certainly. So the question, I think, for the agency is, are they to change the proposal that we were going to schedule the public hearing about? Okay.
I think that based on their review of the construction costs, the sales tax is based.
No, I mean, as to the pilot.
As to the pilot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
The question for the board.
could you restate that?
So the question for the board is, I guess, whether, based on this review, they want to consider modifying the proposed pilot structure. And I think, I assume, Madam Chair, that you want to hear from the developer as to that issue as well.
I mean, I think we're comfortable with the structure that we've discussed and has been presented by BJH. And I think that, their review of the construction budget, they did scrutinize the estimated sales tax exemption and mortgage recording tax exemption. So I'd imagine that any subsequent review from BJH isn't going to move the needle in any material way.
Thank you.
I'd like to propose we amend and go by the recommendations of the report to change to 20 years.
I second that motion.
Madam Chair and Madam Chair, Mayor, is it, I believe Michael has provided a form of resolution for your consideration. The resolution will recognize that you previously adopted a resolution accepting the application and authorizing a public hearing to be set with a specific financial assistance proposal and describing, briefly describing the proposal, but the same as in the preliminary resolution, and that the consultant, your consultant, has presented a report containing a cost-benefit review of the financial assistance, and the applicant, this assumes the applicant has acquiesced and submitted an amendment to the application requesting that 20-year pilot in that form, in the form of, I would say, alternative 2 as presented by the financial consultant. So that would be appended to this resolution. And that's what you could consider if you so choose.
With the motion that was just made.
Yeah, to incorporate this resolution in that motion.
I second it, so. discussion before we move forward with the motion from other board members? Those in favor, aye. Anyone
Aye.
opposed? And a chance for the 2-year mark of the pilot. Motion passes. Any other comments or questions from the board?
Madam Chair, the next step in this process would be to receive the amended application from the amendment to the application from the developer, confirming what they have just stated, and then proceeding with getting a public hearing date, which will be dependent on our ability to get a notice in the legal classifieds of the Register Star. So by law, it has to be published for 10 days. So we do have a regularly scheduled meeting on August 4th, but we're not confident that we'll be able to get it in the paper 10 days before then. But we will work with the board members and notify the public. And if any of you would like to leave your email address, so we're sure that you're, by being here today, we know of your interest, that we'd be sure that you would get a notice. We can notify you when we would be able to schedule that hearing based on the legal notice and confirm your availability. But we would expect sometime between the 4th and the 11th. And then presumably you would schedule a meeting a week later to consider the projects.
The calendar is clear for the first week of August. Any other questions from the public to the presenters? Yes. State your name, please.
It's Roger Hannigan Gilson, I'll give you a picture from the Times Union. I just had a question about the assessed values. Would you be able to say if the assessed values were lower, how that would affect your recommendations for the pilot?
Well, we don't know what the assessed values are going to be. I mean, I think what we tried to do is show you that we looked at two different ways to try to estimate or predict assessed valuations. One was an income-based approach, which based on the developer's model would have yielded around 130,000. That also fell within the high end of the range of comparables. The way that the pilot was modeled in the pro forma, though, was on a slightly higher assessed valuation. If the assessed values come out lower, then the pilot payment will naturally also be slightly lower. The percentages of the schedule won't change, but if the assessed value comes out higher, then because you're applying a fixed percentage to that higher number, then the pilot would come out higher. So if the assessed values are lower, the pilot payment lower. If the assessed values are higher, pilot payment higher.
Do you have another question from the board?
Rebecca Wolf from the board. In the report, it said that that conversations with the assessor were inconclusive, and I just wondered if you could say anything more about that.
Well, we had a couple of exchanges, and I think that we were in the midst of scheduling perhaps a third conversation, but then this meeting got scheduled. I think it's just the nature of, the fact that it hasn't gone through the assessment process. I think our main point was that the assessor hasn't had the benefit of looking at an actual, real property income and expense report that would end up determining the assessment. So we're using the pro forma, we're using our best methodology on comparables. However, it is to be determined in the future as the future market will determine the exact income and expenses. Sorry, I have a little dog.
The issue was that there are only 3 or 4 comparable properties, and they're 30 years old, and maybe a little short on deferred maintenance. So it's very difficult to compare this to Bleecker, or not Bleecker, but Hudson Paris or Crosswinds. This is also a different style of building than Crosswinds, which is the most recent. So, you know, it's more of a 4-story, right? 4-story, 3-story, 5-story. So, you know, when you look at the press releases that are coming out of the governor's office for low-income housing projects throughout the state, and you divide the number of units by the total cost of the project, you're looking at you know, values of 250, 240, 250. So, you know, certainly an assessment at 130 would result in about $25,000 less in pilot payments. And you know, I think that you know, that is based on, you know, the development cost and the pro forma. I think Camoin calculated the first year assessed value at 170. Is that correct, Rachel?
Yes, that sounds correct. That's the approach that we took.
Could you just describe that approach briefly?
Yep, absolutely. So the net income approach is based on the costs and revenues that are expected to be generated from a project in the first year. And then a certain capitalization rate is applied to that to determine the net income approach and then the full market value. And this is a standard approach that we have used in other places as well, although like others have said on the call, you know, once it actually is built and assessed is when that final number will be determined. But this is an approach that is often taken to determine the full assessed value of a project that's not yet completed.
If there aren't any more questions from the board or from before the reporter, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hudson IDA meeting is over at 1:35. Thank you all for coming. See you after the public hearing.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.